Lester Parker had a dream. It was a simple one, like many dreams, but it still demanded effort to become a reality. Sure, Lester and countless others often spent hours fantasizing about the outcome, uttering phrases like, "if I were," or "it would be great if," or "when I win the Powerball out." For most, though, that was the extent of their pursuit. Many people in the world do, indeed, embark on the journey to realize at least part of their dreams. Lester, however, was a different kind of dreamer. He dedicated countless hours to his dream, yet didn't waste much time planning how to achieve it. Instead, he just did whatever was necessary to get by. This approach is all too common. More people than we'd like to admit simply muddle through life. Lester seemed no different until, somehow, something changed. Lester bolted upright in his bed at the sound of loud banging. The piercing dong, dong, dong of a wooden spoon striking the bottom of an aluminum dishpan echoed through the room, wielded by his mother. Her screech cut through the noise as she barged in, the door bouncing off the doorstop. "Lester, get your lazy ass out of bed right now. If you're not dressed and downstairs in 5 minutes, you'll leave without breakfast. Your daddy's already outside checking the truck. Now move it." Lester groaned and collapsed back onto his disheveled bed. He felt weak, shaky, and dizzy. Some of that could be chalked up to the beer he consumed the night before, but his mother's jarring wake-up call didn't help. You'd think an 18-year-old man, fresh off his high school graduation and a celebratory party, would be cut some slack. Lester glanced at the clock and winced. He'd managed a scant 2.5 hours of sleep. No wonder he felt unsteady. He was probably still legally drunk and absolutely drained. He recalled stumbling into the house the previous night, giggling and shushing his friends as they tried to help him in. Sabrina's assistance stood out in his mind. She wore an attractive blouse that showcased her figure under the porch like his parents had left on. She had her arm wrapped around his waist, with his friend Oliver providing additional support as they guided him onto the porch and through the door. Lester was unclear on how he ended up with Sabrina. Sure, he knew her, one of the 47 graduating seniors in his class who had been at the Riverbank party. What puzzled him was how she ended up with him and Oliver when they headed home. He remembered cramming into the cab of Oliver's truck, with Sabrina in the middle. She'd slipped back into the truck by the passenger door after they'd left him in his living room. He even had hazy memories of the party, but couldn't place Sabrina with Oliver. Watching her button her top before getting back into the truck with Oliver further muddled his thoughts. Lester staggered down the stairs into the painfully bright kitchen. His mother had set a plate of fried eggs, potatoes, sausage patties, and toast at his usual spot. He sat down and began to eat when his father stormed in. "Damn it, Lester, we don't have time for you to laze around. Get your ass up and let's go. We have a long day ahead." Lester looked up, taking another bite of his breakfast. His father's voice boomed again. "I said you don't have time for that. If you wanted to eat, you should have gotten up when we called you the first time. Now move it." Lester frowned, recalling nothing of the morning until his mother jolted him awake with the loud clang of a dishpan. He shot a glare at his father while hastily assembling a sandwich with his breakfast of 2 eggs and sausage, covering it in ketchup before wrapping it in a paper towel. Lester trailed his father out the kitchen door, climbing into their battered, old F-350 Dually. His father took the driver's seat, nudged the 17-year-old truck into gear, and they began the bumpy journey down their potholed, red clay driveway. Attempting to eat his makeshift breakfast as the truck jostled, Lester longed for the fried potatoes he loved with his eggs and sausage. Lester managed to finish his sandwich just as his father pulled up to the first stop of the day. They got out, and Lester began the grueling task of tossing garbage bags from along the streets into the back of the truck. He despised the job, but it was essential for keeping the family afloat. Everyone contributed. His mother and 2 sisters worked at the local diner and Dairy King, while his younger brother mowed lawns with the same push mower Lester once used. Now Lester's role was to help his father run their private trash service, serving their small town and surrounding areas. After an exhausting 11-hour day, Lester and his father finally returned home. Lester had lost count of how many bags of trash he had loaded and unloaded, but his body bore the toll, hot, tired, filthy, and hungry. He hated the work but saw no alternative. College was out of reach financially, and with his grade point average of 2.1 out of 4.0, he doubted any institution would accept him anyway. His future seemed set: either continue in the family trash business, or, if he got lucky, land a blue-collar factory job. Dreams of wealth, nice clothes, and new vehicles seemed just that, dreams. Reality was harsh. He was poor, poorly educated, and destined for manual labor. The summer dragged on, with Lester lifting an endless stream of trash bags and bulkier items 6 days a week. One fall day, their old truck broke down, giving Lester an unexpected day off. He headed into town and joined his friends at the Dairy King. Oliver was there, enthusing about his new night shift job at the La Z-Boy plant. Curious, Lester learned from Oliver that the job involved long hours but paid well. 4 10-hour shifts, with the potential for overtime and increased earnings through piecework rates, sounded promising. On impulse, Lester hopped onto his old 150 motorcycle and rode to the La Z-Boy plant to apply for a job. To his surprise, after turning in his application, he was asked to wait. Soon, a man in a suit emerged from an office and invited Lester in for a visit. While they were talking, the man scribbled notes in the margins of Lester's application. After a few moments, the man leaned back in his chair and said, "All right, I think we'll give you a shot. We need a couple more men on the night shift. When can you start?" Lester was nearly speechless. He stammered, "I guess I could start Monday. I help my daddy on his trash route right now, and I ought to give him a couple of days to find a replacement." "Ok. Come in around 2:30 Monday afternoon and see Miss Jensen in the outer office. She'll help you with the paperwork and introduce you to your foreman. He'll get you started. Here's our policy manual. Make sure you read it and get familiar with the rules. You'll be on a 3-month probation. If things go well, you'll become permanent after that. Any questions?" Lester shook his head. "No, sir. I'll be here Monday. Thank you, sir." Lester's father was furious when he told his parents he'd be starting at the plant on Monday. Lester knew his father's anger stemmed from the added burden he'd have to bear on the trash route once Lester started at the plant. Before Lester graduated, his father had managed the entire workload, except during school holidays and weekends when he made Lester help. Now, Lester suspected his younger brother would inherit the chore of helping after school and on weekends, but Lester didn't care. In his mind, he was on the path to riches and luxury. Starting at nearly $7 per hour, he envisioned earning about $260 a week without overtime. If he worked quickly, the piecework system could nearly double his base pay, and he could even afford a used truck. Life seemed to brighten, and Lester had a little spending money, but he didn't feel rich. Of course, the $100 a week his father demanded for room and board ate into his take-home pay. He hadn't anticipated that taxes and insurance would cut over $100 from his weekly earnings. In fact, $118 was deducted from his base pay each week, leaving him just $52 for spending money, plus any overtime he could earn. Most weeks, he barely met the rate, but as he got faster, he still hoped for better days. Lester was frustrated. Despite earning what he considered good money, he had no more disposable income than when he worked with his father on the trash route. Like many low-paid blue-collar workers, Lester spent every penny he earned. Sometimes he lacked money for even the basics like clothes. He had to cut back on beer and socializing to afford shoes and work clothes. He saved diligently and eventually scraped together enough for a down payment on a used F-150 from a buy here, pay here lot. That added another $25 a week to his expenses for almost forever. The truck was on a 4-year note, and if he missed a payment, the dealership could remotely disable it until he was paid up and covered the reactivation fee. Lester wondered where the good life was. One evening, Lester and his team ran out of parts. The supervisor gave them the option to clock out and go home early without pay and incentives, or stay and do casual work for their base pay. Everyone but Lester left. He needed the money badly enough to stay. He was assigned to carry trash out of the factory and put it into the proper receptacles. When all the bins were full, Lester went back into the plant to find the foreman. Lester approached Simon and said, The bins are full, and there aren't any empty ones in the storage area. I can't take any more scrap out. What should I do instead? Simon, the foreman, stormed outside, saw the overflowing bins, and started cussing. God damn it. We paid those idiots good money to pick this up and get rid of it. This is the third time this month they've let the containers overflow. This has to stop. I'm going to raise enough hell this time to get them to lose their contract. And look, even the area for used pallets is almost full. Move as many pallets as you can and stack them, then report back to me. Simon, how much do we pay them to take this stuff off? Huh. Oh, they get $2 per pallet and $10 for each barrel of metal scraps. The wood scrap is paid by the truckload, but it's handled by another company. I think they sell it to a charcoal kiln if it's hardwood. I'm not sure what they do with the softwood scraps. Damn. What do they do with the metal and pallets when they haul them away? Hell, we don't care. They'd probably just take it to the dump. Once they haul it off, it's their responsibility. Do you think they'd hire me to do it? I could take the trash out every day after my shift and guarantee it would always be clean and neat back here. I could really use the extra money. Well, I don't know. Do you have a way to get rid of this junk? If you do, I'll ask and see if they'll allow an employee to handle it, but you'd have to sign a contract, that's for sure. Yeah, I have a decent truck and I can get rid of the junk. My dad runs a trash service, so I could use his license to dump things at the landfill if necessary. Lester didn't hear back from Simon or the company about handling the metal scraps and pallets, so he assumed they weren't interested. He was disappointed but let it go. About 3 weeks later, he received a message to meet with the plant manager before his shift the following day. When Lester reported to the office, he felt concerned. Although he couldn't think of anything he'd done wrong, he wasn't sure that wasn't the reason for the meeting. Usually, disciplinary actions were handled by the foreman or the personnel manager. After exchanging pleasantries, the plant manager offered Lester a seat and said, "Lester, I understand you're willing to take care of our scrap for the same pay that the current company receives. I also hear you're willing to haul it off daily at the end of your shift. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir, I can do that." "No problem. I have a good truck and can manage it." You realize those barrels of scrap metal are very heavy, and we won't load them for you. Some days, there are also 30 or 40 pallets that need to be disposed of. I doubt a pickup truck could haul all that in one trip. You need to make several trips to meet your obligations. Also, there's more to the deal than just removing the pallets and scrap metal. Our contractor currently supplies any pallets we need for shipment. We pay $10 per pallet and require at least 50 per week. You need to supply however many we need, even if it exceeds 50. Wow, I didn't know that. How long would I have to supply the pallets? I'm not sure where I could buy them or what they'd cost. Well, I can't help you there, Lester. However, we would provide 2 or 3 days' notice so you have sufficient time to deliver the new pallets. We will specify the size and type of pallet when we place the order. I know the current company rebuilds the pallets we send them and returns many. If a board is broken, they replace it, ensure all boards are fastened securely, and reuse the pallet. As long as the pallet is in good condition, it doesn't matter if it's brand new. Often, the pallets you take away don't even need repair, so you just have to store them until we need them back. Yes, sir. I definitely want the contract if you're offering it. I'd need an attorney to review it before I sign, though. That's fine. I wouldn't expect anything less. The plant manager leaned towards Lester and handed him a contract. Here's the standard contract. Review it and get back to us by next week, please, Lester. As Lester drove home, his mind raced. Damn, he could make as much from scrap and pallets as he did working on the floor. 50 pallets a week at $10 each would be $500. He would be rich. He didn't consider the business expenses he would incur. The next morning, Lester called the attorney his father used for the trash business and scheduled an appointment to review the contract. To his surprise, he secured an appointment 3 days later. During the meeting, the attorney opened his eyes to some realities. He explained performance penalties if Lester didn't meet the contract's requirements. He also mentioned that Lester would need at least some tools and materials to repair or build pallets if he accepted the contract. He suggested Lester build several new pallets as inventory in case the plant needed delivery before he had enough used ones in stock. Lester left the attorney's office feeling sobered. His gravy train seemed to turn into a nightmare. Where was he going to find a place to build and store pallets? Where would he get the money to buy the necessary tools and lumber? He wanted this new job, but couldn't fathom how he could afford to take it. If he failed to supply the required pallets, he would have to cover the company's costs for obtaining them elsewhere, including shipping, and then he'd lose the contract. Like many young people, Lester didn't overthink his decision. He was enticed by the potential money and downplayed the challenges. He signed the contract and turned it into the company. The agreement would commence in less than 2 weeks at the beginning of the next month. A week before his start date, he received a letter from the company ordering 50 pallets for Monday of his first week in business. Lester panicked. On his lunch break, he rushed to the trash area to check the pallet situation. He was shocked to see only 3 broken pallets where there were usually dozens. He then checked the scrap metal area and saw the bins were nearly empty. As he was leaving, he spotted his friend Sabrina driving a forklift out the door with 3 empty pallets. She smiled when she saw him and stopped. "Hey Lester, I didn't know you worked here. When did you start?" "I've been here since the first week of June." "Hey Sabrina, I started in late September. Do you have any more pallets back there?" "I got the contract to haul them off and bring in good ones when needed. I'm supposed to deliver 50 on Monday, but there are only a few here. I don't know what to do. How can I bring in 50 pallets when I can only take 5 or 10 home?" "Oh, man. Sorry, Lester, I don't know where there are any more empty pallets. I only bring in those from my area, and we don't keep many in the back. I saw the old guys loading everything earlier today. They were joking about cleaning us out and making the new contractor build or buy new pallets. I guess that's you, huh?" "Yeah, and I don't have the money to buy or build them, even if I had the tools and knew how. What am I gonna do? They'll have my head if I don't supply what they need." "Wow, Lester, I don't know what to say. I'll look around and see if I can find any more pallets, but even if I do, it won't be anywhere near 50. Catch you later." Lester walked back to his work area, feeling sick. He couldn't focus the rest of the night, worrying about the pallets. At quitting time, he talked to the night manager about the missing pallets and scrap metal. The manager smirked and said, "Yeah, I saw the old crew picking them up at shift change. What's your problem?" "I have the contract to supply the pallets and take off the used ones and scrap metal. I'm supposed to deliver 50 pallets next Monday, but there aren't any in the storage area for me to refurbish. I heard the old company took them earlier today." "Yeah, so they still have the contract to pick up the pallets and scrap metal until the 1st of the month. You got the contract starting next month, but they have the right to pick up the pallets and scrap metal until then. Their contract is in effect until midnight on the last day of this month. Legally, you don't have a right to the pallets or scrap metal now." Lester looked at the manager and muttered, "Damn," then turned and walked away. He was totally screwed and knew it. How was he going to get the pallets if there were none to pick up? The next day was Friday, and he normally had it off. Around 9:30, Sabrina called him. "Hey, Lester, I just had a great idea. My folks live south of town, and there's a lot of new construction going on there. I see a lot of pallets in the dumpsters from the crews when they build new houses. I bet we could find some of the pallets you need there. Want to try? I'll help if you do." "Hell yeah. I never would have thought about that, and I used to work on a trash route. We never did new construction, but we did find a pallet or 2 occasionally on the route. Where do you live? I'll come right over if you don't mind." Lester met Sabrina at her parents' house, and they began scouring the area for pallets. They only found 17 pallets in the dumpsters, but that was a start. Lester started to feel better, but was still worried about his chances of failing now that he was in the hot seat. Sabrina helped him unload the pallets at his home. They sorted the good ones and set aside those needing repair. While they were eating lunch, Lester looked at her and said, "Hey, what about the dump? Maybe we could find some pallets there too. I think I can get in since I used to run the truck with Dad. It's worth a try anyway. Lester and Sabrina jumped into his truck and headed to the dump. After some negotiating, they'd finally gained access to the area. They found 11 pallets they believed could be repaired and 7 more to use for parts. Post-repairs, Lester had 29 out of the 50 pallets he needed. He then visited the plant to check if the weekend crew had cleared any pallets and discovered 6 more, bringing his total to 35. Panic set in. How was he supposed to buy lumber and build 15 pallets in just 2 days? He didn't even have the necessary tools. Determined, Lester dipped into his savings and managed to buy some low-grade green oak lumber from a local sawmill. He loaded it onto his family's trailer and hauled it back home. Methodically, he disassembled a good pallet to use as a template and mapped out the design he needed. He spent all of Saturday cutting lumber and dedicated Sunday entirely to building pallets. By the time he was done, it was past 9:30 p.m., but he had 53 completed pallets. The downside: he didn't have sufficient funds for his upcoming truck payment due on Wednesday, and he was unsure when he would receive payment for the pallets. On Monday, Lester delivered the pallets and collected the scrap as promised. His frustration peaked when he learned that payment would be made within 30 days. He pleaded with the office staff, but they were unsympathetic. Company policy dictated a net 30 payment term, and they wouldn't budge. Desperate, Lester borrowed enough money from his mother to cover his truck payment and fuel costs, but finances were incredibly tight. Following this ordeal, he began scouting construction sites for discarded pallets and usable lumber from dumpsters. Remarkably, he found valuable nails, screws, and metal for recycling. The dumpsters, he realized, were a gold mine, and since the materials would otherwise end up in a landfill, he didn't consider it theft. As winter wore on, Lester started to gain control of his burgeoning business. He built a robust inventory of quality pallets and only needed to purchase lumber occasionally. His dumpster diving continued, yielding useful pallets, wood, and metal. To his surprise, he made a decent profit from selling scrap metal to recycling yards. Once he found nearly a whole 55-gallon barrel of brass fittings after a plant overhauled some airlines, earning him close to $1,000 in a single week. Then the inevitable happened. The economy took a downturn, leading to layoffs. Last hired, first fired, as the saying goes. Lester, Sabrina, and Oliver found themselves unemployed. While Sabrina and Oliver struggled, Lester felt the pinch but had his side gig to fall back on, albeit with reduced income. With more free time, he ended up back on his father's trash route. Not exactly thrilling, but it was a way to get by. Lester swung by the Dairy King one day to hang out and spotted Sabrina nursing a Coke. He joined her at the booth, and they started chatting. As he lamented about his recent layoff, Sabrina interrupted. "Why are you complaining? At least you can still cover your bills. I had to move back in with my parents, follow their rules again, and ask for money just to buy this Coke. My unemployment checks barely cover my car payment and insurance. Do you need any help? I could really use a job right now," she asked hopefully. Lester shook his head. "No, sorry. I can handle everything in just a couple of hours a day at the moment. I have to do it late in the evening or at night because my dad has me back on the trash route, and I don't need any more pallets. I've got more than I can use. I just wish I could sell more." "Why can't you?" Sabrina queried. "Have you reached out to other businesses to see if they need pallets? With how you find them in dumpsters, you could probably sell them for less than $10 each if you had to. Ever calculated how much it costs to build them from scratch? Maybe we could start a pallet business together." Lester sighed. "I've never really done the math. Give me a second." He grabbed a napkin and scribbled some numbers. "If I use all new materials, a pallet costs me about $20 using grade 3 lumber. The only way to make a profit is to rebuild and repair. Then why not approach other companies and see if they need the services you provide for La-Z-Boy? Keep scavenging dumpsters to stockpile pallets. Build a few if needed. You could even expand into recycling metal and pallets," Sabrina suggested. Their conversation was interrupted when Lester's phone rang. It was his mother, and she sounded frantic. "Lester, your dad's in the hospital. They found his truck by the roadside with him lying in the ditch beside it. "I'm on my way there now. Pick up your siblings and meet me there," she said, her voice shaking. Lester jumped up. "I gotta go, Sabrina. That was my mom. Dad's in the hospital. I need to find my siblings and get over there." By the time Lester gathered his siblings and arrived at the hospital, it was too late. He found his mother sobbing in the emergency waiting area. She stood and embraced him tightly. "Lester, your dad's gone. The doctor said he likely died before he hit the ground. It was a massive heart attack. What are we going to do? We were just barely managing with all of us working, and now we won't have his income." Lester hugged his mother and extended his free arm for his now sniffling sisters, while his younger brother clung to their mother's other arm. "At least I know how to run the trash route. I'm not working right now, so I can take it over and keep that income coming in. Let's head home. We'll figure out the rest later." After ensuring his mother and siblings were safely back home, Lester tracked down the location of the trash truck. With Sabrina's help, he drove there in her pickup, and together they completed the day's route. Determined to maintain the family business, Lester decided to run the routes daily, just as his father had. They scheduled the funeral for Sunday to avoid disrupting his work. Lester quickly discovered the grueling reality of running the route solo. He had always assumed his father was just shirking duties when he asked for help, but now he realized the sheer physical toll of getting in and out of the truck at every stop. The task took several more hours to complete single-handedly. Remembering Sabrina, Lester felt torn about spending their limited funds on help, but recognized he couldn't manage the route alone while also tending to his pallet and scrap business. Pulled over at a wide spot on the road, he called Sabrina. "Hey, Sabrina. Running this trash route alone is brutal. Now I understand why Dad made us kids help when we weren't in school. Could you give me a hand with the route? I can't offer much, just minimum wage and overtime if we go over 8 hours a day, which we usually do." "Heck yeah. When can I start?" she replied. "I wish you were here right now. You can start immediately if you're up for it." "Sure. Give me 10 to 15 minutes. Can you come pick me up? I don't have a way to get to you." "Yeah, I can come by. It'll take me about 20 or 30 minutes. Wear durable boots, steel toe if you have them, and old clothes. It's dirty work." "Great. See you in a few." That day, Lester and Sabrina finished the route together. When he dropped her off at home, he asked, "So, do you think you want to keep helping, or was it too much?" "It's different from what I expected, but I want to keep working if you think I can handle it." "Okay, we'll start early. I'll pick you up around 5:30 tomorrow morning. We've got one of the shorter routes in the nicer part of town." By the end of the week, Lester and Sabrina had successfully completed the routes with relatively few issues. Though they operated a bit slower than Lester and his father once had, they were still learning how to work efficiently as a team. When things finally calmed down after his father's funeral, Lester realized he was now in charge of the family's trash business. Surprisingly, one upside to his father's passing, if you could call it that, was an increase in the family's disposable income. His mother and younger siblings qualified for Social Security survivors' benefits, which were tax-free given their income bracket. His mother could receive benefits until the youngest child turned 16, which was only 2 years away, but every bit helped. The 3 youngest children would receive benefits until they turned 18 or finished high school, whichever came first, unless they got married, which would immediately stop the benefits. Fortunately, their earnings were low enough not to affect the benefits. At least this ensured they wouldn't starve or lose their home, a small comfort in trying times. Lester continued managing the trash routes and the business. Finally, he had the chance to implement some ideas his father wouldn't entertain. He began by cleaning up both the garage and the large machinery barn. He organized the tools and set up some woodworking machines he had bought for pallet construction. With the frame built to hold pallets while he nailed them together, he created a sort of assembly line inside. Additionally, he dedicated an area of the building for furniture repair. He was astonished by how much quality furniture he found on his trash routes that only needed minor repairs to be as good as new. Some items practically looked new already, likely discarded by wealthy residents who simply tired of them. He typically found these valuable pieces on routes through the higher income parts of town. Sometimes a chair or couch needed just a good cleaning or reupholstering. Other times it only required a new leg or another small wooden component. By disassembling, replacing the broken parts, and reassembling, he transformed it into a perfectly good piece of furniture. Many of these discarded items were expensive, name-brand pieces that resold exceptionally well after repairs and cleaning. With both Lester and Sabrina having worked in a furniture factory, they were well versed in furniture building and repair. Sabrina, especially skilled in upholstery, had worked in that area for about 6 months. They even purchased a used upholstery sewing machine to make recovering furniture easier. Once a piece was refurbished, they advertised it for sale, consistently earning more than they spent on repairs. Lester shared half the profits with Sabrina. One day, while unloading yet another high-end couch, Sabrina suggested, "Lester, we're making as much now as we did working at the plant. Why don't we start hitting garage sales, picking up quality items, sprucing them up, and reselling them? We can repair broken furniture and refinish items if needed." Lester pondered the idea but raised a concern. "I don't mind that plan, Sabrina, but where would we store them until they sell? We're already maxed out on space here. It's a real challenge keeping the furniture clean in the work area." "Yeah, that's a good point. Hey, what if I talk to my grandfather? He owns an old 3-story building on the courthouse square in town. It's been empty for several years, but the ground floor used to be a variety store for ages. Maybe we can clean it up and use it as a showroom. We're close enough to the business district that transporting repaired furniture there wouldn't be an issue. In fact, we could even move the furniture repair work and tools into the warehouse part and do everything on site. That way, we wouldn't have to move the furniture after it's fixed. I've given up hope of being called back to the plant, and to be honest, I enjoy helping you with the route and working in the shop much more." "Let's do it, Sabrina. I've been looking at our income, and it's amazing how much we make from things people throw out. We should give it a shot. However, we'll need to find someone to keep the store open. If we use it, we need to be open for several hours a day instead of just by appointment. I can get Tommy to help with the route on Saturdays, or even on Fridays and Saturdays if we have a sale to attend. You could go to the sales, buy the items, and then use my truck to haul them home or wait for me to help. I think we can make this work if we can sort out keeping the store open." Lester, caught up in the excitement, pulled Sabrina into a tight hug. She pulled away, looking puzzled, but remained silent. Embarrassed, Lester quickly looked away. That evening, Sabrina talked to her grandfather about using the store building. He agreed, on the condition that she would handle all licensing fees, insurance, and utilities. Since she was his granddaughter, he gave her a break on the rent, asking for 10% of the gross sales, not to exceed $1,500 per month. Startup costs nearly derailed their plans. Getting utilities turned on was a headache, and the insurance quotes were outrageous. Then Lester had an idea. He asked his insurance agent if the store could be covered under the same policy as his trash business. After some adjustments, they managed to secure the necessary insurance at a much lower rate, and they went ahead and opened the business. By the end of the fall, as cooler weather slowed down yard sales, the two partners had filled their new showroom with beautifully restored used furniture. They focused on stocking high-quality items, and word began to spread. Customers started seeking them out for specific pieces. One woman even hired them to refinish her expensive dining room set, which netted them over $1,500 in profit, completed in their spare time. They also bought some nicer non-furniture items at rummage sales and sold those in the store. The partners even started manufacturing solid wood furniture in their spare time, which became an instant hit and brought in significant revenue. They secured contracts with 2 more factories to haul away metal scrap and pallets on demand. Business was booming to the point that Lester had to hire an additional full-time employee to help with the trash route. They meticulously sorted out metal trash and any salvageable furniture items, taking only the actual garbage to the dump. Occasionally, they found items at the dump worth bringing back for resale, adding yet another revenue stream to their growing enterprise. The week before Thanksgiving, Lester rearranged his pickup routes to ensure they had Thursday and Friday off. They worked longer hours the first 3 days of the week, but it was worth the effort. While they worked, Lester chatted with Sabrina about the holiday. "I think Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday," he said. "The family gets together and we eat all day. We have our favorite desserts and the traditional Thanksgiving foods for lunch. Everything tastes wonderful and it's a perfect holiday. The weather is usually nice enough to enjoy being outside, and there's none of the commercial hustle and bustle like Christmas." "How about you? Does your family have a big gathering too?" he asked. "No," Sabrina replied. "It's almost just another date for us. It's just Mom, Dad, and me. Mom usually fries chicken or something, but we don't do turkey or anything really special. Dad spends all day in front of the television. It's really a depressing day, all in all." "Man, that sucks. Did you ever do the whole big meal thing?" Lester inquired. "Yeah, when I was little and my grandparents and uncle were still around, we had a big meal. But now, we don't. Gramps can't get out easily, so he doesn't come over. We usually go to his tiny apartment where Mom cooks. There's hardly any space in his kitchen, even if we wanted to do the turkey and all the fixings. So we just have a regular meal and go home after an hour or two. I sure miss the big Thanksgiving feast. Last year, I even sneaked out to a restaurant by myself for turkey and all the trimmings, but the food was terrible and there was no one to eat with. I guess I'll just stay home this year. Why don't you come to our house for lunch?" Lester suggested. "You can spend the day and we can hang out. I'd really like to have you over. I get tired of hearing the kids and Mom bickering all day, and I don't enjoy the shows and games on TV that much." "I couldn't. That's family time, and I hate to intrude," Sabrina said. "Oh, come on. You'll have fun. We always make way too much food. Besides, it doesn't sound like you do much that's family-like anyway," Lester insisted. Sabrina's heart raced. She looked at Lester and saw the eagerness in his eyes. She couldn't resist. With a smile, she said, "Okay, fine. I'll come for Thanksgiving turkey with you. What do you want me to bring?" Lester beamed and said, "You don't have to bring anything. We always have way too much food. I just want you to come and enjoy it with us." When Sabrina arrived on Thanksgiving morning, she brought her specialty despite Lester's insistence she didn't need to bring anything. She knew he loved coconut cream pie, and everyone said hers was the best. She brought a small flower arrangement for Lester's mother and handed Lester the pie. His eyes lit up, and he grinned. He set the pie down, pulled Sabrina into a hug, and kissed her cheek. "Thank you, Sabrina. How did you know I like coconut cream pie? I told you not to bring anything." "Well, do. You go on and on about it every time you find a piece in the cafe or your mom makes one. I'd have to be deaf not to know that. Besides, I'm going to eat your food, so it's only polite to bring something to the meal," Sabrina replied with a laugh. Lester sat at the head of the table during the meal, while Sabrina was seated to his left. After the meal, they all lingered at the table talking. Lester couldn't stop praising Sabrina for how much she'd helped him on the route and shared some of her great ideas for the business. Sabrina was taken aback when he reached out and briefly held her hand. Lester's mother noticed the gesture and glanced at Sabrina, smiling softly and nodding her head in approval. The day seemed to fly by. Before Sabrina realized it, the shadows had grown long and evening was settling in. With a sigh, she said, "I really have to go. I've had such a wonderful time today, but I've overstayed my welcome. Thank you for including me. You don't know how much it means to me." Mrs. Parker smiled warmly and replied, "Oh, I might have an idea. We've loved having you, Sabrina. You must come back soon." Lester walked Sabrina to her car and, to her surprise, gently kissed her on the lips before she got in. Stepping back, he said, "Thanks for coming, Sabrina. I really enjoyed having you here. See you on Saturday." As fall progressed and the days grew shorter, Lester and Sabrina became more synchronized in their work. They complemented each other perfectly, rarely arguing despite the close quarters. However, Sabrina felt a mix of irritation and appreciation when Lester would leap from the driver's seat to help her with seemingly heavy objects, regardless of whether she needed the assistance. While it was endearing that he cared so much, It also felt as if he doubted her capability to do the job she was hired for. During the second week of December, Lester appeared anxious and preoccupied on Monday and Tuesday. Despite Sabrina's attempts to find out what was bothering him, he only responded with a flushed face and a curt nothing. Finally, on Wednesday, as they ate lunch together, Lester took a deep breath and asked, "Sabrina, would you go to the show with me?" Sabrina frowned and said, "What?" She replayed the words in her mind, trying to grasp the rushed sentence. Then she noticed his blushing, terrified expression, and everything clicked. A huge smile spread across her face, her heart leaped, and she said, "Yes, I'd love to go to the show with you, Lester." Seeing him relax, she added, "Has that been bothering you all week? Why didn't you just ask me? You should know I'd love to go with you." "I just wasn't sure, and I was scared I'd upset you. I didn't want to make you mad or anything, but I really like you and want to spend more time together." Sabrina laughed and teased, "Come on, Lester, we already spend 9 or 10 hours a day together. Doesn't that count?" "Well, not really. When we're working, it's different. I want to do things with you and have fun." Feeling a rush of affection, Sabrina hugged him and said, "Okay, I get it, and I'd like that too. What show do you want to see?" "Anything you want. You pick. Maybe we can grab a burger or something too, if you'd like." Lester and Sabrina worked hard that Saturday to finish early. They hurried home to clean up and prepare for their first official date. When Lester burst into the house nearly an hour early, his mother grew concerned. She followed him to his room and asked, "Lester, is something wrong? You're home early and came in like your tail was on fire." "No, Mom, I'm just in a hurry. I have a date tonight and need to clean up and leave quickly." Lester's mother relaxed and smiled. "Oh, you had me worried the way you rushed in. Who are you going out with?" "Anyone I know." Looking a bit sheepish, Lester replied, "Sabrina. We're going to grab a burger, maybe some pizza, and then catch the late show." "Okay, well, be careful, honey, and have fun." That evening, Lester and Sabrina went to Dairy Cane for burgers before the movie. Several friends were there and tried to persuade them to join a bonfire by the river. Lester glanced at Sabrina but couldn't read her thoughts. Finally, he asked if she'd prefer the river over the movie. Detecting a hint of disappointment on her face, he realized she wanted to spend time alone just as much as he did. Turning to his friend, he said, "Nah, we've got plans. Maybe next time." Lester knew he had made the right decision when he saw Sabrina's glowing smile. As he finished his drink, he couldn't help but stare. Sabrina finally said, exasperated, "What?" "Nothing. You just look so pretty I have trouble keeping my eyes off you." Smiling, Sabrina hugged him and gave him a quick, impulsive kiss. Their friends saw the kiss, and the room erupted with catcalls and whistles, making a big deal out of the affectionate display. Lester couldn't even recall the movie they watched. He knew it was something geared toward women, but the name escaped him when asked. He slept in on Sunday morning, not waking up until nearly noon. As Lester stumbled into the kitchen and poured a cup of coffee, his mother glanced up from preparing Sunday lunch. "How did the date go, Lester? You got home awfully late. You weren't drinking again, were you?" "It went fine, Mom. Some friends had a bonfire at the river, but we didn't go. No, I wasn't drinking. We just talked and hung out until late." "You really like Sabrina, don't you? Are you going to invite her over for Christmas? If you do, make sure her parents come too, and let me know so I can prepare." "Yeah, I thought I would invite her. I hadn't considered her parents, though. I'll tell her to bring them if she comes." Finally, Christmas arrived. Lester and Sabrina rearranged their schedules to run part of their routes early in the week and part later so they could enjoy a 4-day holiday break. Although it meant longer hours to cover the consolidated routes, they both agreed the time off was worth it. Lester felt a sense of joy this year because he finally had enough money to buy nice presents for his entire family. Although it was going to be a more subdued Christmas, since it was the first one after his father's passing nearly 11 months ago, the excitement was still palpable among all the family members. Lester once again extended an invitation to Sabrina for the Christmas meal, as he had discussed with his mother. He also asked her to bring her parents, making a point to personally invite them one evening when he picked Sabrina up for their date. He purchased small gifts for her mother and father and went all out for Sabrina, getting her a $300 gift card at Macy's. In his first full year running his father's business, Lester generated over $15,000 more in profits than he had made working at the plant, especially when factoring in the additional income from pallets and furniture. Although the combined profits were not quite as much as what he and his father had made together, he believed he could eventually reach that level. After all, he was paying 2 full-time employees and still making significant profits, which he found exceptional. In January, Lester received an unexpected phone call from his largest competitor, an older man who got straight to the point. "Lester, I want to retire. I have 3 choices. I can either close my business, hire someone to run the route, or sell out. Closing down would leave my customers without trash service until someone else picks them up, and I'd end up with nothing but a truck to sell. If I hire someone, they might slack off or damage my equipment, though I might get lucky and find someone capable, but the odds are slim. So, I've decided to sell. I want you to buy my business and take over my routes. I'll give you a good price and guarantee the truck is in great shape. What do you say?" Lester was stunned. Although he knew old man Stephens was getting on in years, he looked like Methuselah himself. Being asked to buy the business was unexpected. If Lester agreed, he would face many of the same challenges Stephens mentioned, like hiring someone to run the routes who might not handle the trucks properly. "What's the matter, boy? Cat got your tongue?" Stephens prodded. No, sir. I'm just surprised. Why did you ask me to buy you out?" "I'm not sure I could even afford it, and I bet many people would be interested in buying your routes." "You might be right, boy, but I've been watching you since your pappy passed. You stepped up and have done an excellent job. You take care of your work and the people around you. You've got my cousin's girl working for you, and I like that. Her daddy wasn't much, but she's solid. She can run one truck while you run the other. You'd still need to hire extra help, but you could each oversee a newbie to ensure everything runs smoothly. I'd offer you a good deal, son." "I don't know. How much are we talking about here, sir?" "Well, I'm thinking $125,000 for everything, the truck, the route, and all my tools and equipment." "I can't afford that. I don't have that kind of money." "Sorry." "Hold on there, son. I never said I needed it all in cash. How about this? You give me $10,000 down, and I'll finance the rest over 10 years at 5%. Your monthly payment would be around $1,220. This arrangement would give me and the wife a more comfortable retirement. I doubt someone just starting out could manage that and still support their family, but you've got the experience. You'll be taking in about $9,000 monthly from the routes. After paying wages and expenses, you'd still have a little left over. You'll be doing better and helping me out too." "I don't know. I need some time to think about it and discuss it with my family." Lester spent the entire day and night mulling over the phone call. It even kept him up at night. The next morning, he shared his thoughts with his mother, who was concerned. "What if something goes wrong, Lester? I don't want more debt hanging over our heads. If you fall ill or something, I wouldn't be able to handle it." Lost in thought during his route that day, Lester's demeanor didn't escape Sabrina's notice. Exasperated, she finally asked, "Lester, what's on your mind now? It can't be about asking me out again. We've gotten past that. What's bothering you?" Glancing at Sabrina, Lester said, "Remember the phone call I took yesterday, the one I stepped away for?" Sabrina nodded, and Lester continued, "It was from your dad's cousin, Mr. Stephens. He wants to sell me his routes and equipment. He thinks you could run one truck while I manage the other. He's willing to finance the majority over 10 years. If his figures are accurate, I could pay you, hire 2 more helpers, cover the operating costs, and still clear over $1,000 more each month than we do now. What do you think? Would you want to manage your own truck?" Sabrina was taken aback, looking scared. "I don't know if I can do that, Lester. It's a great chance for you, but I'm not sure I can handle a truck on my own." "Why not, Sabrina? You drive this truck sometimes without any issues. Whether his truck is a stick shift or automatic, you can manage it. Plus, you wouldn't be on your own. We keep his helper to assist you." "Driving isn't the issue," Sabrina responded. "It's about being the boss. You know, a lot of the guys in this line of work can be real trouble, drunks and jerks. I understand, but if they give you any trouble, just fire them. We can always find someone else. I won't tolerate any nonsense, and you don't have to either. Mom isn't thrilled about this, but I'm interested in trying it out if you're willing to help me. It means a nice raise for you, and we might uncover even more items to repair and sell. Lester and Sabrina spent the entire day and the following 2 days discussing the deal before deciding to move forward. Lester contacted Stephens to negotiate the routes, ultimately agreeing to pay $120,000 for the business with a $10,000 down payment. Stephens held the note with favorable terms for Lester, 4.5% interest, and if both Mr. and Mrs. Stephens passed away before the note was fully paid off, the remaining balance would be forgiven. Lester secured a favorable deal as Stephens' routes were more compact, mainly within the town, and included affluent households. The deal also came with a well-maintained 5-year-old truck and a helper who agreed to stay on. Although the helper was initially unhappy about working for Sabrina, a 50-cent per hour raise quickly changed his mind. By Memorial Day that year, Lester was experiencing deep exhaustion from working 6-day weeks, 50 to 60 hours each week over a long period. He desperately needed to unwind and noticed his increased irritability towards his family, employees, and even customers. Recognizing the need for a break for both himself and his employees, he decided to implement a new policy. Except for Sabrina and the helper from Stephens' business, everyone had been working these long hours for over a year. Lester decided to take a week-long vacation and also offered a 1-week paid vacation to every employee who had been with the company for at least a year. He established a policy that employees would earn a 1-week paid vacation on the anniversary of their hiring date. A week before Memorial Day, Lester addressed his assembled employees in the trash service office, saying, "I'm fed up with these long days and weeks. From now on, anyone who has worked with us for at least a year will get a 1-week paid vacation on their hiring anniversary. No more than 2 people can take off at the same time to ensure we cover our routes. I'm taking off the week of Memorial Day, and the rest of you can see either me or Sabrina to schedule your vacations once you've been with us for a year or more." When Lester made his announcement, the room erupted in cheers. He then added, "All right, let's roll if the pre-operational checks are complete. Sabrina, can you stay back for a moment? I have something to ask you." As everyone dispersed to start their routes, Sabrina approached Lester. He greeted her with a kiss and said, "I want to go camping along the river where it's just us and the sounds of nature. How about taking your vacation at the same time and joining me? We can fish, swim, and relax for a week." Sabrina smiled and replied, "I'd love to, but can we really afford to both be away right now?" "I think you'll be fine. The others might have longer days, but they know their jobs well. We can check in every couple of days to ensure everything's running smoothly. I'd really like for you to come with me." With her eyes glistening, Sabrina smiled widely and said, "All right, I'll do it. A week away, just us, by the river sounds like heaven." They planned to leave at 10 on the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend. Although the river would be busy over the weekend, they expected it to quiet down during the following week. The campsite Lester had in mind was accessible only by canoe and was just big enough for a single camp. It wasn't a popular stop for canoeists due to its small size and the challenging landing conditions caused by a nearby spring. Upon arrival, they found the campsite empty. After an hour of setting up their lean-to-tarp tent and arranging everything to their satisfaction, Lester waded into the stream and floated on his back, letting the tension melt away. Sabrina quickly joined him. That evening, after a delicious supper, they grabbed beers from the cooler and leaned back to watch the sunset. Sabrina nestled into the crook of Lester's arm and rested her head on his chest. She looked up and said, "Oh, Lester, this is perfect. Now that the floaters are gone, it's so peaceful. I could stay here with you forever. I'm so glad you thought of this." Lester hugged her tightly before leaning in for a kiss. The kiss quickly grew intense, and in the dim light of the campfire's orange embers, they made love for the first time. Afterwards, Lester rolled off and Sabrina snuggled against him, resting her head on his shoulder and wrapping her leg and arm over his body. "Oh, Lester, that was beautiful. I love you, you know that. Now I understand what everyone was trying to tell me. Intimacy is so much better with someone you love." Lester gently kissed the top of her head and replied, "Yeah, I know what you mean. I love you too, and it was amazing." The two new lovers lay in the thickening darkness, listening to the running river and the sounds of wildlife. They slowly drifted to sleep. During the night, Lester awoke from the cold and, after peering over the edge of the camp, covered them both with a light blanket. The next morning, the sun rising over the river gently woke him. Quietly, he got up and stoked the fire to make coffee. He found a comfortable spot by the river, leaned against a tree, and sipped his second cup. Not long after, Sabrina appeared, slowly making her way down with her own cup of coffee. She settled beside him, leaning on his shoulder as they silently sipped their coffee, watching the world wake up for another day. They spent the entire week at the same idyllic spot, indulging in fishing, swimming, and lazing around. On Tuesday, they canoed downstream to pick up more supplies and check on the business. Finding no issues, they restocked their ice chest with more beer and other essentials before returning to their gravel bar camp to enjoy the rest of their week together. By July, the economy was improving and the plant started recalling workers. Lester and Sabrina declined the recall, but their business flourished as a result, with more pallets to sell. By the end of the summer, Lester had hired 2 new employees to keep up with the demand from both the pallet business and metal recycling. He promoted Sabrina's helper to driver and teamed him up with one of the new hires on the truck. Sabrina transitioned to working in the furniture business full-time. Tommy was also promoted to full-time in the pallet business and metal recycling, handling the factories and trash routes. Sabrina's new helper, a young woman previously trained in the plant, proved skilled in furniture building and upholstery. That fall, during the Labor Day picnic Lester hosted for his family and employees, he approached Sabrina. Taking her hand, he asked, "Take a walk with me for a minute, Sabrina." She smiled and leaned into him as they walked. At the edge of the property, they found a spot to sit. Lester, a bit nervous, reached into his pocket and said, "Sabrina, I know we haven't had many dates, but I think we know each other pretty well. You know I love you. Will you marry me?" Sabrina gasped, her eyes widening as she saw the ring he held. She licked her lips and whispered, "Yes," offering her trembling hand for him to place the ring on her finger. After slipping the ring on, Sabrina pulled Lester up and enveloped him in a deep kiss, their happiness palpable. Breaking apart, she took his hand and hurried back toward the festivities. Once they reached the crowd, Sabrina headed straight for her mother, proudly showing off her ring and receiving a warm hug. They made their rounds, sharing the news and basking in the congratulations from friends and family. Later that summer, Sabrina's grandfather passed away, bequeathing the store building to her and the remainder of his possessions to her parents. In their spare time over the following months, Sabrina and Lester transformed the second floor into office spaces and converted the third floor into apartments. They found great success renting the offices, primarily to attorneys. Interestingly, a couple of young attorneys just starting their careers also rented 2 of the 4 apartments upstairs. The rental income from each floor soon surpassed the furniture store's profits. Consequently, they decided to close the store and convert the ground floor into additional offices. Meanwhile, Lester took a significant risk by purchasing a commercial garbage truck for his business. This new truck was so efficient that he managed to consolidate 2 days' worth of routes into one, completing them in the same amount of time each day. He and Sabrina only ran the trucks when one of their full-time employees was unavailable. Within a year, Lester bought a second truck and phased out the smaller ones. By the age of 27, Lester had inadvertently achieved his dream. He now owned 2 refused trucks, managed thriving trash routes, and oversaw a successful pallet and rental business. He and Sabrina no longer needed to run the trash routes except in emergencies. Instead, they focused on office work and occasionally helped build pallets in the shop. They lived in a 4-bedroom house in the best development in town and eagerly anticipated the birth of their third and last child. Lester's brother and his sister's husbands worked for them and held partial ownership in the trash business. Sometimes dreams come true even when they happen by accident. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you liked it, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.